Welcome in. Hey, today on the podcast, I'm sitting down with Nicole Serrano. About a decade ago, I was hosting benefit concerts in the Chicago suburbs with some of my friends. We were raising money for school and water projects in East Africa, and we were looking at artists that we could bring in to be a part of this thing. And Nicole came across our radar. She was a worship leader in Minnesota. She had some just like really great I think she had like an EP out at the time and a few songs that had gone a bit more viral. And so she was gracious enough to come out to the concert, and that kind of put her on my radar. So for the last decade or so, I've followed her music journey and what she did within worship and in Christian music. And her story is one of being a part of like the mega churches, going on tours, all of that sort of stuff. And then went quiet for a few years. And about, a couple months ago, she popped back up on my radar because she was coming out on Good Morning America. We're going to talk about that journey for her upbringing, and really just talk about what it's like to change your mind and how does that shift your relationship with God? How does that shift your relationship with people? How does it make you think different about the church? And Nicole's been really encouraging, even just from this conversation, to me to remind me how much I love music and how much I enjoyed leading worship. So that's been something that's stuck with me from this conversation. I don't want to take up too much time here. I do want to apologize ahead of time because I've been uploading the full videos, and that didn't happen for this episode because there was some crackling on my side, and then our voices and the video didn't sync up right. So all that to say, audio only today, and there will be clips that'll go out on YouTube Shorts or Instagram Reels or TikTok. So if you want to watch those, hey, this is a really good episode to go plug or to go follow those accounts because you can't actually watch this full episode. So, all right, let's dive in. Here we go. This is my full conversation with Nicole Serrano. Nicole, I'm so pumped to have you on Undercurrents, get to chat with you for the next little bit here. Thanks for doing this with me.
Oh my God. Again, the internet connected us. I think was it 11 years ago that we first met?
Yes. I was thinking about it, and I almost brought like a couple pictures of what we would have each looked like 11 years ago because I had that long real swoop hair that I'm very proud to not have anymore.
Hey, you rocked it. It was the right time for that haircut though.
That was for a benefit concert at a church, which really does set up a lot of probably what we have to talk about, because I was speaking and singing in church in those days. You were singing and doing all of the things in church in those days. And I've kind of like slowly watched your journey on the internet and been like, I resonate with certain things here that are happening. And you're basically go from, leading worship in Minnesota. This is what I see. So you can fill in gaps that I don't see, right? And it's like, okay, now you're out in Colorado. I see you on tour with large worship people. And then all of a sudden, quiet for a few years. And then Nicole pops back up in my feed, like on Good Morning America. And I'm going, okay, wait, you might have posted something a few days before that. I don't know. But I was like, oh my gosh. And when you came out and then it was on Good Morning America, I'm like, that was, right around the time of COVID, our church was going from non-affirming to being affirming. We both grew up in Assemblies of God churches. So, and like that also just changed the entire way that I thought about faith, was really that topic. It started to
really,
I don't know. It started a lot of conversations, and I can't even imagine your personal journey. So I want to get into a bunch of that stuff because I'm just having the conversations. I'm not actually having to have the courage that you had. So,
well, I'm very, my dog's going to freak out right now, but
that's fair.
But I love hearing from people who don't identify within the queer community as, that being, wow, sorry. My girlfriend just got home. But just hearing that that's an issue and that is problematic for people that it doesn't directly affect, I'm always so interested to hear. So I can't wait to dive into that too.
I wrote a bunch of questions that I'm like, these are the main things that if I walk out of an hour of talking to Nicole, I want to know what she thinks about these certain things, or how her, yeah. So part of the process, I think, would just be going back in your journey first to set the context and set like how you grew up in church and then some of the shift. So let's just start with that. I gave the broad, very brief overview, but what's your journey with like music and church in the early years, and how did that develop into something that you were really giving a lot of your life to?
Well, first of all, thank you for caring, one. And some of the questions you sent over were very thoughtful and just showed that you have a lot of empathy, and especially in today's crazy world, it just keeps getting crazier, and it's just really refreshing to be able to talk to somebody who you can trust and look at and be like, all right, this is a good person. So first of all, thank you. Second of all, it's been a wild ass ride. I was basically born in church. My parents kind of stumbled into church when I was 4, and my dad got radically saved in the Assemblies of God denomination. And so that quickly turned into the whole family coming to church every Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday, Friday, the whole, 4 days a week thing. And that's really what it was most of my childhood, just growing up in church. My dad's a singer, and so he was always singing. He led worship for a while, and I was crazy at home, but in public I was a little more shy. And so at home he'd be like singing at the top of his lungs, and I would quietly be like mousing harmonies, and he's like, what was that? I was like, nothing. So he like forced me on stage, and which I'm very grateful for now, because I don't think I would have been courageous enough to be like, I want to try that. So I was singing on stage at churches since I think it was 10, and I learned how to play all the things because he needed a drummer and he needed a piano player, he needed guitar, and so it was just like, all right, I'll try to figure it out.
Yes, that's like 90% of church worship kids, right?
I know.
You just whatever the gap was in youth group, like that's how I learned guitar. That's that's the same thing actually. I mean, my dad not forcing me into it, but someone heard me sing and then they're like, yeah, you should like lead worship or something. And I never thought about it. So yeah, I totally get that. You whatever the gap is, you just fill it.
But like, what a jump. Like you just sang a little line and then like, hey, you should go lead a whole congregation of people. And you're like, you're right, I should.
That's the logical next step. Although that's a really cool, there's not many environments, I will give it to the church. There's not many environments where that type of creativity, and especially like, hey, in the Assemblies of God, there are some very creative outlets that now I I'm removed from, but also other, like I wouldn't have ever picked up a guitar if I hadn't have been in that. I don't know. There's also the like human videos and things we don't need to talk about, but
we don't have to talk about that.
When you get to college, that like at that point you'd already been leading for like churches for a while, and that because that seems to then start, obviously you're having to make life decisions. That feels the logical next step of I'm gonna give my life to this music thing and church thing. What was your thinking in that season of time?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't know how you feel about this, but I think worship leaders are a special breed. And I never really wanted, that's a lie. When I was really young, I wanted to be Darlene Check from Hillsong.
Okay, fair.
And I would get the little like worship leader suits with the like, it was bad, but
I wanted to be JD from United. I could never have long hair like that, but I get it. It could have
been something wonderful if we had met earlier. But I wanted to be like, a Christian singer for like 5 minutes. And then I was not allowed to listen to non-Christian music. So that was very sheltering. And I didn't know what was out there until I went to college. But I always kind of felt like church music is cool, but it's different. It's like there's something more going on. There's something spiritual and emotional, and it's important, and it needs to be protected, you know? And so bumping shoulders with a lot of other worship leaders throughout the years who kind of just liked the attention or liked the people looking at them and the, like, you know, the church celebrity stuff, that always really bothered me. And so I was like, okay, I don't want to make a living out of doing that, but it's also all I know how to do. So I was kind of in this tension of like, I want to be on this platform because I feel like there's a calling on my life to do that. But at the same time, I want to be an artist and I want to make money and I want to like not feel bad about making money. And so there was that whole thing. But yeah, I had been doing that since 10 and never stopped. And then went to college. I worked at Emmanuel Christian Center. They were awesome. At that time, I was so deep in the closet and so tormented that I just couldn't even like connect with people, which is
okay. So can we talk about that for a second?
we sure can.
And I do not want to put, I don't want to put you like on the spot at all. So
No.
you can, yeah. But I also,
came out Good Morning America, so it's like at this point.
It is true. What's a more public way to come out? I don't know one. In that season of time, there was also a little bit of like a running joke that Nicole might be dating Jesus or something. So what did you know about your sexuality at that point? Are you for sure like, I am gay, I know it, but I can't tell anybody? Are you wrestling through like, nah, maybe I'm not? Or what? How did you think about it?
I am a freak who I knew when I was 3 years old. And it was, I don't know, it's like whatever you think about past lifetimes, it's like you have wisdom in your body. Like, I don't know, but this little baby 3-year-old was like, I am different. I'm noticing that all the movies I watch, all the toys I play with, it's a boy and a girl, and what I am is not okay, and I can't tell anybody. And so nobody told me that. Nobody, like, that was before all the indoctrination and all the messages I heard. It was like, I'm not allowed to be this. I should be ashamed. So I wrestled with it my whole life. And my dad was also a pastor. So I was a pastor's kid in the AG. And to me, it was like what a lot of people still say, which is like, you just need to repent and you need to trust in God. And you need to pray and you need to do this long list of earning God's approval and it'll go away. And so I tried that for years. Didn't, take away from like the deeply unsatisfied, sad, lonely person that I was. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm a good looking person. So like, let me just date some guys and like give it a shot. And
maybe it'll go away. Maybe just, maybe this is how everybody feels.
Of course. So I dated every cute guy I could think of that was like not annoying to me. And like, and a lot of them were super attractive. And that's how I knew that it's not going away.
It proved it to you. You're like, I know that this person is attractive.
They're attractive. They're kind. They have a good heart. And like, I still just can't want it. And so I did that, until I was 28. But at the time in college, I just was so like, when you're told you're going to hell for being how you are, it's like you become a shell of yourself and scared of everybody. And it was just, it was really sad and lonely. And I felt like I had to hide this thing that at the time I was struggling with. I was struggling with same-sex attraction. And I couldn't tell anybody. And I couldn't really get help. Like, who's gonna help you? Like, I was a pastor's kid. I was in leadership my whole life. I was in Bible school. I knew all the things. And it's like, you're not going to tell me anything I don't know. So I just need to tough it out. And so I did that for a really long time. And it never worked, but I thought it worked for a while.
You posed a really good question. So this is a peek behind the curtain of the podcast, but I typically just set a timer for like 45 minutes. And then I just deep dive into somebody's life for that time and just, okay, what are interesting things? I might screenshot some stuff or like anything on social for you. Like I'm going, watching little like clips, you leading worship, whatever, and just being like, okay. But you posed a question in an Instagram story where you said, why does it take so much courage to be honest? And that question is one I've thought about a lot too, because I didn't have the same feeling in church of there being this massive maybe thing that I had to like hide or deal with, or like what people aren't going to really be able to help with this. So what am I supposed to?
Yeah.
But yet still somehow I've come to the same question, which is so interesting because I can't imagine one, the weight that you felt because you did have that thing that was like, I know what people think about this and I know it's not accepted. But in general, there seems to be church environments that already, if you don't add religion, Nicole, I've been in environments where I'm like, it's really hard to be honest. Yes. Then you add religion, it gets way harder because the level goes up of like what's expected, what's required. If you're standing on a stage, we put higher requirements on those people. And we've seen how that works in non-denominational or AG. I mean, we could list 100 pastors right now that walked away from it all or were excommunicated because of stuff that they felt like they had to hide. So I don't necessarily think either of us has an answer to that question. But when I pose the question back at you, what does it bring up? Like, why do you feel like it takes so much courage to be honest?
I think this whole idea of certainty is such a threat to anything real. And I mean, we both grew up in an environment that was like, here's what you have to profess and confess and cling to. You can't trust yourself. You can't trust your mind, your heart, your flesh. It'll fail you. Like, so then what the hell do you have? Like, you can't trust anything that was made in the image of your creator. And so it just strips you of all trust in yourself. And then it's like, well, if I don't matter, if I can't cling to anything that is inside of me, then like I just do what the guy on the stage says to do. And my thoughts don't matter because I'm not as smart as them. And it just breeds an insecure person who just does the next thing that someone else tells them to do without really sitting with your own feelings, or like feelings are the enemy.
Yeah, I literally was told feelings are the F word.
Are you serious?
That was a joke, in a running joke in I won't say where that, but it was a real thing. Feelings are the F word. Think about that now. The movement away from leaving some of that stuff and going. I mean, that's probably one of the biggest struggles I've had, is actually knowing what I feel. So to imagine being told that, like, oh, what you feel, like you shouldn't feel it anyway, dude, that's a crazy. That takes a long time to process. I don't know. I've said this already so many times, so maybe this is partially an Enneagram podcast, but I always say this is not an Enneagram podcast. But that was part of my healing process, was thinking through. I'm a 3, and so very shiny. Like, put me on a stage, let me speak, let me perform, let me whatever the thing is. And it was a great artistic outlet too. But then when you tell me that like feelings are the F word, that's really helpful for a 3, because I already don't know what I feel. Right. So I don't even have to investigate it. And it's probably from a lot of stuffing, just don't feel that. Just don't feel that.
I'm an Enneagram 4. So it was like, I want to explode. You're telling me that I need to just ignore these feelings or they don't matter. It's like, well, then what do I do? Like, what do I do with what's going on inside of me? And if it doesn't matter, why do I have so many of them? And why are they wrong? So it's like, okay, me as a queer person, I'm wrong. Me for having feelings, I'm wrong. So like, what the fuck would you like me to do?
And courage to be honest about that then, because if you're not supposed to be feeling it and there's layers deep of that, then
there's no point. And vulnerability was never really there. Like, the only vulnerability I could think back to is like confession. Like when you confess your sins to a youth leader, but it's like, for what reason? Like, what's the end? Like, nobody's really, is anyone getting better? Is anyone getting closer to like healing? Or is this all just performative? And so I think now I'm finally at a place where I can look at church, organized religion, and just be like, honestly, I'm sad that I feel this way, but I feel like it's all bullshit. Because the system, like having one usual white guy on stage telling everybody else what to do, it puts so much pressure on him. Then he can't be honest. He can't be vulnerable. He doesn't have anyone to lean on. And then it just breeds hiding. And then if your feelings don't matter, then you don't have to think about it. You don't have to have accountability. So it's
but
just,
also you're jumping through a
I
hoop
think
there
the
too,
whole,
but not you personally, but when you get into that thinking, because if you can't trust your feelings or you can't trust some of what you know, then like, how do you know that the Bible that you were handed or the thing, like everyone is in some way trusting their feelings, but maybe it's even a generational thing, like the church that we grew up in. Because sometimes when I have these conversations with older people who like didn't feel the same things that I feel about church, I think they tried to communicate maybe the best they could. Sometimes definitely not, but even if I'm going with the best of intention, thinking through it, the ways that it was communicated, how it made people feel, that's where the communication needs to happen now. It's like, hey, this messaging over a series of years had me feeling like I couldn't trust myself. Even if that's not what you meant to do, that's how it came off.
Yes.
And so I resonate with that a lot.
I just think so many structures of, I don't know, the way that everything was organized, it's like we just did things because we did them, or we just did them because that's always how they'd been done. And it almost just felt like, wait, why are we taking communion? Or like, wait, why are we having a Friday, service before the big service and 17 services after? Like, why again?
This service needs 9 prayers in it.
I don't know. I was just always wondering the why. But I was also really grateful for my parents, who are just really strong people, and they raised me to believe that I could do anything and that I was capable, and they instilled me with a sense of confidence that never was taken away, which was really grateful for. That was beyond like what I could do or perform. It was like, no, you have the right to speak up and do what's right for you. Even if it meant doing what I did.
So let's keep this story going, because there's a lot of other just church questions that we'll come into. But when did you decide this isn't working at all, so I'm going to find the courage somehow to tell someone? What did that look like? Because did you say you were 28 when you finally like confronted it?
Yeah, I say I was 28 when I came out to myself. So awareness changes everything, but I was becoming more aware of other people's stories, and I was living in Denver, and Denver's a blue state, and it's a lot more progressive than Minnesota, and definitely more than Nashville. And so I was just like seeing a lot of rainbows, and I was seeing a lot of like pride, and I was just like, okay, maybe, what if they're okay? What if there's nothing wrong with them? So it started like thinking of other people. What if someone's really born like that? Like, what? God loves everyone, right? Like, okay, God loves them. And then I would just hear different messages like, there's nothing we can do to earn or lose God's love. And I was like, that's true. And I was like, wait, is that true for me? And I was like, maybe, okay. So then I was like, I need to go to therapy.
That's a good conclusion to draw. I'm proud of you for that.
That was the first time I went. And honestly, for 2 years, I just sat with a therapist and grappled with the thought that, what if I was created like this by God, And what if God loves me just the same, even if I did nothing to change it? And I think that was the hardest thing, was to consider another possible answer to the questions that I'd been asking. So I sat with that for a long time. I read every book on it, every like podcast, like a lot of the same podcasters I'm sure you've like talked with, like a lot of those helped me through a really private, isolated kind of journey until my body also helped me. I started having debilitating panic attacks, and I had never really had an issue with anxiety, and it just took me to the ER multiple times, and I couldn't function normally. And so that was my body being like, hey, bitch, like, we can't do this anymore.
Something's got to change. Yeah.
So, yeah, exactly. So I slowly started to come out to my friends and my brother, and everyone was awesome. And I met somebody at the time, and I was like, okay, we're going to be open. We're just going to be open. We're not going to make any decisions. I can change my mind at any time. But I was like, here's a shot at love. And I didn't go looking for it. And I fell for her, and it kind of forced me to make more choices. So I came out to my family a couple of years ago, and at first it was hard, obviously, to be expected. But since then, my mother has come with me to Pride events, and she's a proud ally. And my father is very proud of me, and my whole family like has my back. And for being a former AG pastor's family, that's a miracle in and of itself. But yeah,
That shouldn't be understated at all. That's worth sitting in even for a second, because there are a million ways.
God, yeah.
And you think of the line, I forget who coined that, like the bad theology kills. Thinking of that, I really do believe like people are good deep down, but then you're given so much stuff, you're fed so much information, and then you're told like, if you don't believe this exactly right, you're screwed, or you're going to hell. And you imagine that carried out over years. So then you get to, I mean, your dad, your mom, the age that they get to, I think of my parents or just the previous generation, they've been sitting in all this stuff for way longer than us. So then for you to come out, and for them, even if it's hard, to be where you are now, I mean, just commend your parents. Yeah, man, what is there a lot of like pushback in the initial days of just the typical things that you would hear, and like the normal fears that you kind of have to confront, people bringing up Bible verses, that sort of stuff? Or how does that go? Is it more of just they hear your story and then there's some quiet?
Yeah. I went the route of writing a letter, which I'm
so smart.
Yeah, I definitely encourage everyone in that position to do that, because you get to say everything you want to say, no interruption, no emotional like throwing you off your course. Lets them process. It's more gracious for them. And so yeah, after they got the letter, they had questions. At first we're like, we don't agree, but you're our kid and we love you unconditionally no matter what. And I think it helped because I was at that point in my early 30s, and I was in a relationship for multiple years. So it was kind of like, you can't really talk me out of it.
Yeah, you're independent. You're just giving them information about your life.
Right. I'm not 21 and just like trying this thing out, and I kind of figured it out. And so yeah, we had some theological conversations, and I had basically written a dissertation at that point, like of why these 6 scriptures are, this, and this. And after, I remember my mom emailed me because she was like, I want to make sure I say it right.
It's fair. She's writing her letter back to you.
Yeah, exactly. And she's like, so what do you think about the Bible and what this has to say about your choices? And I wrote back a long thing, covered everything. And then she wrote back, she's like, okay, well, to be honest, a lot of that went over my head and I don't understand it. She's like, but what I do know how to do is love my kids. So that's what I'm going to do. And I was just like, oh, like that is the perfect answer to anything.
Yep. Yeah. And there is space for questions because people have been given a way of thinking about the world. And I feel for people that feel like they can't bring their questions because for whatever reason. No, there's room for questions. It's how it comes off if you feel like you absolutely know, which brings it back to what you were saying about certainty earlier. Certainty shuts down conversations that need to happen.
Oh, every time.
And believing the best in people, even when they say something that you're like, maybe I wouldn't say it like that. Or you have a question on the Bible that maybe I don't wrestle with anymore, but I'm going to hold space for you because I know that ultimately where you're coming from is love. That's such a beautiful way that's the only way that this ends up getting any better or moving forward. And I've seen a lot more of that, I guess, in the last maybe couple years, but I appreciate that. That's really, and it is funny that she emailed you. I would love to. I've gotten the occasional email from my dad, and there's something special about getting an email versus
like, we really want to get this right.
Yes. Okay. So I want to go from family back over to church world, because how does it go over there? I took a screenshot of some cover that you did, and you put a little text on the screen that said, "This one's for those who have been presented with the option to live an autonomous lifestyle or keep their church job, but definitely not fired." So take me to that, Nicole. What's going on?
You are a good researcher. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it feels so still.
Fair.
There were definitely people who had my back and fought for me and protected me. And the one thing I will say that I'm thankful for at that period is that I wasn't outed and my story wasn't told for me. And a lot of people in my position don't get that treatment, which is so disgusting. So I'm grateful for that. But yeah, I was presented with the option of, either you break up with who you're dating and you are celibate for the rest of your life and you get to be alone, or you can choose to live this sinful lifestyle and you lose your job. And so at the time I was like, I'm going to break up. And then I was like, that's stupid. I can't. And then I was like, okay, I guess I'm going. And at the time I took the responsibility. Like, it's really complicated, I think, because it's like, yeah, I chose to leave, but for a church that is seemingly so progressive and says everyone is welcome and makes it so hard for people to have clarity on where they stand with things. That's why I even came out, because I was like, I feel like I'm safe here. I feel like this is going to be handled well. And it just wasn't. And I was just, all right, thanks for everything except for no thanks for anything, and like leave in 2 weeks, and just no honor, which is what churches like that preach every Sunday. No anything. There was no dignity in it. And it was really hurtful. It was painful. And that's why I kind of went dark for, I think it was like three-ish years. And I was just trying to heal. And I never wanted to step foot in another church. And it's just a lot to unpack.
We can pause there. Yeah. I don't want to make it. There's so many things that I even want to ask based on that.
Yeah.
I want to get into what it made you start thinking about spiritually, and how what else does it start to maybe unravel, or questions you start to ask? Because anyone who goes through church stuff like this,
yeah,
it doesn't just stick in one area. And a lot of people ask you when you're processing all of it, like, wait, So you came out, but now you have this doubt or this question or this thing over here. I don't get how they're related. I'm like, oh, trust me, everything's related. Because once you start thinking about the Jesus you grew up with, God, you think about church, the entanglement that's happening, it's impossible to untangle in, oh, I'm just moving this part theologically. Now and I can't even imagine when it's attached to something like when it's literally who you are and in getting, I mean, you didn't get fired, but to be asked to leave from a church, there's a lot there. Okay. I'm trying to think of where I want to take this. Let's go to, let's talk about your spiritual journey in that season. So when you're in a place where you're asked to leave, are you angry with God? Are you, I'm going to just walk away from all of it? What's the first inclination of Nicole when, all right, now I'm out of church. I'm no longer this professional Christian. I can do what I want. I'm dating this girl. Where does it take you?
I was really angry at the people I'd surrounded myself with for years, and the level of hypocrisy. I know you are too, very justice oriented.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, if you're doing this to me, why are you promoting the guy who outed me, who is very questionable in many different ways in the way that he conducts his character? If you're getting rid of me, why are you keeping this person? I could go on a list of things, but they continually got promoted or pushed more in the spotlight when I was coming to them from myself, being honest and saying, I think that I'm a gay Christian. Is that okay here? I'm just really realizing this, instead of like hiding and lying and being so shady. And it's like a lot of those people are still there in leadership. And that, I think, enraged me the most, was just like, not that I'm better than anyone, but it's like, can we just tell the truth? Like, I finally got to the point where I saw the truth about myself. I realized I can't change it. I realized this is who I am, and I don't want to hate myself anymore. And you're kicking me to the curb.
Seemingly the time that the church should be most alive for you, that
exactly.
The community should most have your back.
Yes.
That's so frustrating.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating.
So it's like other lines are okay to blur. Like other sins, if you want to categorize that as a sin, are, more workable. So like, you cheated on your wife or you beat up your wife, it's okay, we'll send you to counseling, but you can still have your job. But like, I'm telling you, I think that I was born like this and nothing about my character has changed whatsoever. And there's not a place for me anymore. So yeah, the hardest thing was seeing the hypocrisy and just how any one person could decide what's okay and what's not okay. And it was no longer.
You see their hypocrisy, but for your personal feelings towards, like, because community is one side of it, towards God, does it just throw how you think about God completely up in the air, or are you still hanging on somehow? Because to be honest, that was the most vulnerable part of this story that I still struggle to talk about, because I don't want to alienate anyone listening to this who's just still super in church world. Like I want to go on a journey with as many people as want to go on this journey with me. But when it wasn't really community, there were people close to me that, our church decided to become affirming. So like the community in a sense made the decision I'm happy that we made. But at the same time, how that was perceived by Christians as a whole made my brain just want to blow up, and then made my thinking about God in many ways blow up. We are not thinking or talking about Christianity handed me this way of belief that, like, I was so sure, when we're worshiping we're all thinking about God sort of in the same way. We're all moving in the same direction. And then you go, wait, are we? Like, what is this? And so, yeah, what does it do for the way you think about God?
Okay, so a little bit before I'd left, my view of God had been expanding slowly. And I really believed that God was more good and more kind and more loving in more ways than I thought possible, which made the threat of being queer, like, it doesn't
So some of the
matter.
therapy stuff, everything, you're also addressing how big. You kind of alluded to that, like God is way bigger than this, so I can love myself and all of this. Then you start to tell people, so okay.
Right. Like, I don't have to earn God's love anymore. I never did. So to kind of get in that headspace a little bit and like dip my toe in that water, it's like, oh, I think I'm missing a whole lot of this picture. And then to be handled that way by a very powerful, very influential church with very little love, I'm like, how are you saying you're representing this? And then I don't know. I think it was just like I was really done with people for a while and definitely done with church. And I saw behind the curtain enough times at that point. But for my thought with God, I don't know. I think I was curious about other religions and
same.
This kind of interfaith space of I knew enough about like Islam that they call Allah God and they mean the same God. They just aren't talking about Jesus. And it's just like, okay, so I knew that. If you think of like Eastern religions or like original people groups, like what is that all about? What is spirit about? What is energy about? What is higher power? And so I'm like, I think we're all saying the same thing.
Did you start? I could hear some specific voices from previous years of my life when I started asking those questions. Now Nicole's new age.
Oh yeah.
Now she, that triggered a whole new level of like fear and silence. I wasn't going to tell anybody for a while how infatuated I was with Buddhism because it was like, dear God, if you think I'm off the rocker for my thinking on LGBTQ inclusion, I'm screwed when I talk about this.
I'm telling you what, Buddhism seems like the safest bet. I'm with you. I think I had done so much. Like, I already read so many Rob Bell books at that point that I was like, so I might be a little new age. I don't know.
Put me in whatever camp you want. That's part of it. That's so cool about the journey is you're proving to yourself by having courage that you can be brave in other areas. So whether in the silent years, you're still proving to yourself over and over again, like, I have the courage to figure out who I authentically am.
Yes.
I can read whatever I need to read.
Yes.
I can take in information and it doesn't pollute me. I had a girl on here. The first few times she did yoga, she felt like, oh God, this is like the devil's thing. That's what she had been told all growing up. So she's like, I have to think of Bible verses as I'm in this yoga class. And just, it sounds crazy to say out loud, yet at the same time, I can put myself there with certain things. I'm going, we think like content is off limits. We think even just having constructive conversations between, like, wouldn't we rather know what we have in common than all the things that separate us?
What have they done to us?
It's so odd. It's so odd. I'm fascinated by what you're saying because I do think oftentimes as people leave church, they either have a lot to work through on the people side, which it sounds like that's your story, or on the God side. And we're a little different in that yours seems more on people. And even though people sort of treated our church bad, it made me really question, what do I actually think about God? What do I actually think about Jesus?
Yeah.
Worship?
Yep.
Let's go there for a second.
Yeah.
I love music.
Uh-huh.
I love singing. And when everything happened with Icon and with the church, I couldn't sing anymore.
Really?
I could not get myself to, and still it's very difficult because it was so attached together. Sometimes it's healing when you pick up the guitar and you like play something that you maybe used to sing.
Yeah.
Sometimes I hear lyrics and I'm like, dear God, what was I singing?
Yeah.
So how does your relationship to music heal you, hurt you? What do you think of music in that season and now? Because I've even seen, I saw you're like, I don't know if you're currently leading worship at a church. We can get there in the future. But I heard you in a little interview clip where you were leading New Wine, and I almost bawled, Nicole, because I was like, I haven't heard that song since in 4 years. And I was like, okay. So just take me into your brain on this stuff.
Yeah. Well, I decided a while ago I was gonna make music my career, and
thank God, good decision.
Yeah, so I was like,
thank you for doing it.
I think I got a little defiant too towards the end because my voice was on 90% of the records that came out of a church I was part of, and I was like, you are not gonna keep me from doing what I do. I was like, at first it was hard because it was like every week I would sing how many services, and my own music kind of shrunk, and when you're doing so much worship stuff, it's kind of like it takes up so much of your brain, at least for me, that I didn't write as much, or I didn't do anything else. And so I came to Nashville right after that whole thing, and I would just like sing to myself, and like, in a sense, like sing over myself in a weird woo kind of way, and like just trying to find the healing and not letting the sound of my own voice trigger me. Because it was used to singing in certain spaces. And I am really shocked that my view of God didn't. I don't know why.
No, I think it's beautiful. I think it's so cool. I do think and I want to hear what you're gonna say. There's a health to the way that you did it, in that you were in a setting where you could think about how much bigger God is than just the situation you found yourself in. That makes it unique versus if you had to process that more publicly first, and maybe those things would have been more attached together.
Yeah, all of it, you think you get to a place where you're like, oh, it makes sense, it's clear, and then you start talking about it again, you're like, I don't even know. But I think I was angry with God for letting me be in that position for a while. I was like, why would you even open the door for me to be there and like let me get this hurt and this devastated? But now it's like, okay, well, if I didn't, I don't think I'd be where I am today. So I think time helps. I don't think time heals anything. I think it helps. So yeah, I came back and I was like, all right, I am going to pursue music. I'm not going to let worship take all of my energy and effort. And so, yeah, I came back and I was kind of hell-bent on making it work, and it's working. I did it. And then that girlfriend that I was in a relationship with, she wasn't, she didn't have the same experience with her church and the same kind of trauma, but she came and visited me in Nashville, and one of our favorite podcasters, Pete Enns and Jared Bias was at the church here in Nashville, and she was like, we have to go here and speak. And I was like, I'm not going to church. And I went to church and met him and met the pastor, and the pastor knew a lot of the people that I knew from Denver, and ended up going because it was a different kind of church and it felt like church rehab. it was very progressive, very affirming, very inclusive. And so I was like, all right, maybe there's more to this. And there's also a flair of interfaith, conversation, and definitely more universal, bigger picture. So I was like, I didn't know enough about that, so I wanted to go and learn.
That's where.
And then fast forward, now I'm leading worship.
So you're ahead of me in that. I don't know what the future holds there, but not in. So the church journey is similar. We've been going to a Presbyterian church for a couple months, and I haven't said this on any of the podcasts yet. Opens up a whole new, maybe like can of questions, gives seeing the world from like a bigger perspective, being allowed to ask questions in church. I've had like 2 or 3 moments where I'm biting my tongue and like holding my jeans as like tight as I can, because I'm like, do not start bawling right now, as you're hearing them be like, oh, it's safe to ask questions, or it's safe, like certain things where I'm not even sure. You said something earlier that made me think about this too, but I'm not even sure if growing up in church, we weren't told to ask questions, or that wasn't encouraged. Because sometimes I think even in AG circles, it was, but again, it was how it was perceived. And if you ask this question, we will give you this book to read, because this is like the church agrees with this author, and so what it's doing is, yes, you were told you could learn, but you were only told to learn in a certain direction. In the same way, you said the whole "everyone is welcome" line, and it got me thinking. I mean, almost any church that's on the path to being a mega church in America right now has that line somewhere in their lobby, somewhere on their website. And it's just not, it's not true.
It's
true to an extent, in that everyone is welcome to come in and participate by sitting at a Sunday morning service, and tithing. And tithing, definitely. If you'll give them their money, awesome. They need a new light. But but what that actually means, I mean, Nicole, that was the trigger for our pastor. He had a couple come up and say, hey, will you do our wedding? And a lesbian couple. And he's like, shit, I want to do their wedding, but I can't, because I know our bylaws, and I know, and I feel that, because I also went on a journey the 10 years before that, where anytime someone would sort of, I think you'll understand what I'm saying, kind of move the line, where at first it was just, we all know you can't be LGBTQ affirming. It might have been on the website back in the day. It was definitely, it was public. And then pastors got creative, and that felt more loving for a season. Like, oh, we're going to kind of hide it. We want people to at least feel like they can come. We'll have a sermon where we apologize to the LGBTQ community. We won't say we're affirming, but we'll apologize. And it kept kind of moving the line. And something in me the whole time was like, yeah, like, please keep moving the line. Like, I feel like this line shouldn't even really exist, but I couldn't say that. I didn't have the theological like liberty to say it. And so, but I feel like there's people listening that have been in an environment where when pastor is apologizing to the LGBTQ community, or they're right on the verge of like being affirming, something in your heart like leaps, like you want him to say it, but you don't have the words yet, because you've never been allowed to even explore that. And anyway, that's a tangent, but you just.
No, I feel it. And I felt that same way every time I sat in the service, and it was like, the line kept changing. Yeah. Like, and then being in Denver too, is like, let's talk about marijuana. I'm like, oh my God, we're so edgy. Like, we're so progressive. Like,
figure out a way to be edgy right up to the freaking point of actually changing your mind.
Right. But and that's the thing, going back to what you said earlier about like the older generations, they could see things for how they were intended, but not necessarily how we felt, So like, with this whole conversation, I don't know the intention of those pastors to put everyone is welcome. If that's a good intention of, we want people to feel love and experience God's love when they walk in here, or where my brain goes now, let's trick everyone and get all their money and make them feel like they belong to something, but we'll never let them be in leadership, So it's just, and it's hard. Nobody can really judge the intention, but it's harmful at this point. And that's where the problem is. Just take it off if you don't mean it.
Okay. So can we have you play a song?
We sure can.
I have a few more questions that we can end with, but I think it would be awesome to have you do Time for Everything.
Yeah.
Let's do that. We've never had a song on the podcast, so you will be the first for that.
Oh, I hope it's gonna sound okay. I don't know what the...
Well, the good thing is it's recording audio through the thing we're on, like in the best quality it can. And like video, even if it looks choppy on my end or whatever, it records it in higher. So we'll see. Maybe this will half work, or maybe we'll end up having to put in some like thing in editing and I'll make it sound better somehow. Who knows? But let's try it. This will be great.
I'll try to be really cognizant of the power of the iPhone. You can hear that okay?
Can. Yep. We're good.
All right. There's a time for everything under the sun. At least that's what I had learned when I was young. Lately, all the time it shows you can't trust everything you're told. This is what it's like at 31. I'm not really sure what I believe. Is it history or is it poetry? 'Cause lately all I'm certain of is there's a God they all love, and there's a time for everything under the sun. So when is it time for a liberation? When is it time for a revelation? 'Cause this doesn't feel a whole lot like the Jesus we're preaching. No, this doesn't look a whole lot like the love we're living. No, this doesn't sound a whole lot like salvation. I don't like the labels anymore. Feels like propaganda getting us through the doors. 'Cause what we say and what we mean, they don't line up, they make us mean. What the hell are we even fighting for? So tired of the politics and the wars, using our theology like swords. We've got 40,000 different names, and every name shifting blame. I mean, is this really what the bride is for? Oh, and who said we decide who's in or out? 'Cause if you're gay and know, you better straighten out. Or if your skin makes us feel unsafe, just quiet down, take up less space. When's the time we learn to shut our mouths? Oh, when is it time for liberation? When is it time for new revelation? 'Cause this doesn't feel a whole lot like the Jesus we're preaching. No, this doesn't look a whole lot like the love we're living. inside my chest. I always hold what it's giving me, even if you disagree. 'Cause there's a time for everything under the sun. And it's time for us to learn how to really love.
Goodness.
Like, why did I write a song that's so hard to sing?
Ooh. Man. Can you read the lyrics to the bridge? Do you have that still like right in front of you? That bridge is
the bridge is
so good.
I know the truth is worth fighting for, but something isn't lining up anymore. 'Cause a God who would rather die than not have us right by their side is more about love than we'll ever know. More than we'll ever know.
You took that from Mega Church World and made the bridge the good part.
Yeah.
The truth that resonates there so deeply for me now, as my thinking has evolved, is when you just start, even the name of this podcast, Undercurrents, like what's at the core of things, what's under all of it. And the part that never dissipated for me, even when I had a lot of frustration with like my theology, with God, like there's some sort of core belief that if there is anything worth fighting for, it's love. If there is a God, like something deeply resonates in me that God is love. That hasn't left. And so when you get to that bridge, I just feel all of it. And then I'm like, yep, that's what I come back to, is even just the word unconditional. If I could have everybody sit and do a meditation for 30 minutes on what unconditional actually means, and that you are unconditionally loved, dude, it'll change your whole theology. So many things that you think matter will not matter anymore. So many things will fall off of you, that like all of the fighting, all of the weird debates that you find yourself in church world, so much of it goes away when you're just, wait, haven't we heard our whole lives that like God is unconditionally loving? Does that still resonate at any part of your being? Because that's what I couldn't let go of. Something there still resonates for me and is worth being explored. I hold on to almost nothing else at this point.
Yeah, same. That's where I'm at. Because it's the thought of love, the concept of love, and the fact is like we are all imperfect. We've all been hurt. A lot of us have never been shown love, and that's just cyclical. It just keeps going. And if we just all sat under the messaging and a meditation of you are unconditionally loved, like that would change everything. But it's because we don't believe it for ourselves.
Agreed. Yeah, we're in alignment there. You said something really early on that I also feel like would be good here towards the end, which was talking about just staying true to yourself. I've thought a lot about in the last 3 years how little I knew about personal agency when I was in church world, just owning my life, owning my choices, feeling my emotions, but then also deciding what I do with those. How do you now think about staying true to yourself? I mean, you're a 4. There's an individualistic good side to you that you said kind of got a little fierce in leaving church, which I'm like, I would cheer that on. But what are those ways that you continue to keep that at the front? Like, I want to stay true to myself. I want to continue to be honest, live into that agency.
I think what's kind of cool, and I think every person who comes out later on in life, they experience kind of like, oh, I feel like a baby gay, or I feel like I'm 12 years old. Like, how do I want to express myself? You know, like what do I want to wear? What do I think that's part of it. I think also just staying curious and staying open and never thinking that I know anything really. But yeah, I've been handed many lessons of trusting myself even more the last year, even when I thought I got kind of to the finish line with all of this, and it's like finish line. Yeah, it's like I'm constantly feeling the pull of like, do I trust my gut and what I know and what I deserve, what I want? Are my needs being met? Am I getting the life that I've like fought so hard for? And because I have the tendency to just be like, oh, well, it's okay. It's either like, it's okay, or like, let's burn it down. There's like
not much in between.
Those two extremes. Yeah. But yeah, just trying to like tap into my feelings and express, because even though before, like, I grew up in an environment where it was like emotions aren't cool, so it's like letting them out and just being alive, just letting whatever comes up be, honoring it, and not holding so tightly onto anything really, because everything's temporary, and just enjoying the life that I have right now, because it's probably going to change, you know? Yeah, I think just learning to be content and to be happy, which was never anything I heard of, you know, like that wasn't a priority in the old world that we come from. But it's like, why not? Why not try to find the joy in the mundane? It's hard, but like, what else are we going to do?
That's good. I got a couple more here. One is you mentioned it earlier around awareness and just the key of continuing to just raise your level of awareness. What's been most helpful for you in that? Was it therapy? Was it having like the right people around you kind of ask questions? What has that journey been like for you?
I think it started with friendships that were a little more thought-provoking and had a little more depth, asking questions that a good therapist would ask. And I was like, I didn't know people could think like this. It's like it'd been stuck in my head, but I didn't know there, like, the community and the closeness and the bond that comes with that. And then therapy just kind of shot that through the roof. Therapy really is, I think, the most helpful, because it forces you to be aware of your own inner world. And when you can kind of heighten that, you're able then to be more aware of what's going on around you. I've always been a little observer my whole life, and always trying to find meaning in things and connect. Why does this make this happen?
Yeah.
Or like, when they're like this, that is the result. Like, what does that mean? So I think just that all just gets like sharpened. But yeah, I think just, I wish people were more aware, more self-aware, and more aware of other people, especially right now. Like, I don't know if you've heard what's going on in Nashville, but it's just like bill after bill against LGBTQ, and then a shooting. It's just, there's so much polarization and such a lack of thinking about the person who was in the wrong, or the person who was wronged, or the person who's being targeted. And it's just so us versus them. And it's, I just, it makes my head hurt. Like, I don't understand why it's so hard just to think, just to consider the view from someone else's eyes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, I don't know. I feel like I don't even, what do I know? Like,
well, you have your story, and I think you do know something. Like, no, seriously, people are going to listen to this hour and 10, and they're going to go, oh, I resonate with a lot of what you're saying, because it's lived experience. Am I convinced that I know far less than I thought I knew 5 years ago? Oh, absolutely. That's 99%
absolutely.
of awareness is really realizing how little you know. But then there's some sort of thing that bubbles up in that, where you also kind of go, oh, but if I know so little, it's an invitation into everything. You get to become a kid again. It's what you're saying about coming out in your late 20s, or like just later. You're all of a sudden you're new again. You're Christian language. You're born again. There's something happening there that's a really beautiful invite into life. So so cool. Okay. We're going to wrap this up. I always do this and I told you before, so I'm not just putting you on the spot, but I am calling this like growth gauntlet, growth mechanism, something that I can go do, try. It could be a food, it could be a book, it could be a place, it could be a lot of things. Obviously, depending on how difficult the thing you're about to say is, I can't tell you when I'm going to do it. But whenever I do the thing, I will then report back to you. And future episode, I'm going to tell people about like trying this stuff. So what comes to mind? What do you want to like challenge me to try and help me kind of expand myself?
Wow, I'm a bad little church kid right now, but I think you should try a certain kind of plant medicine.
We're going to have a separate podcast, Nicole, for this.
But yeah, you want to talk about expanding your awareness of spiritual energy, being, wisdom. We can talk more offline about that, but.
All right. You heard it here first. I'll report back. Maybe it'll be a secret episode that no one ever gets to hear, but that's a good challenge. That's fair. Nicole, thank you. Thank you a million times over for jumping on here, for being vulnerable.
We were supposed to know each other.
I appreciate you sharing everything you did. It means a lot.
Thank you so much. You're awesome.